Thousands of ANC members are in Johannesburg as the party opens its 5-day midterm gathering, the 5th National General Council. Held every 5 years, the NGC reviews policy implementation and considers course corrections for South Africa's shifting social and economic realities. Meanwhile, tensions are rising within the African National Congress's alliance with COSATU as well as the SACP, especially with the SACP confirming that it will contest the 2026 local government elections independently. Political analyst Professor Bheki Mngomezulu from Nelson Mandela University joins us now with more analysis. Prof, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. They're pretty much describing it as the ANC's most critical accountability session since 2022. Do you agree? Good morning.
Good morning, Kwabe. Good morning to our viewers. Yes, indeed. It's a critical moment for the ANC for a number of reasons. You recall that in 2021, the party did not do well in the local government elections, having not done well in the 2019 general election. Then the worst was still to come in 2024, where they got 40.18%. So basically, the party has been on the downward spiral, and therefore they have to sit down and then ask themselves very critical questions. What are the causal factors, assuming they don't know by now? And then try to map the way forward for the upcoming local government election next year. And this also comes at the time when the ANC, for the very first time, was unable to win with an outright majority, and therefore was forced to constitute government through a multi-party coalition, which they decided to call a GNU, which I've always argued it is just a multi-party coalition and not necessarily a GNU. But be that as it may, there are so many things that the party needs to discuss, let alone that the trust deficit between the party and the electorate seems to be of serious concern. And then lastly, also the issue of the calibre of leadership, which is the reason why the party is on the downward trend.
So can they fix anything with this caliber of leadership, do you think? I mean, they're saying that it's not going to be a forum to discuss who takes over the party in the future, because that is for another conversation. They've even given reassurances, for the most part, to President Cyril Ramaphosa that he will continue his term till completion. But can this leadership actually fulfill this change or this renewal and revival?
Not at all, my brother, because remember that we had a situation when in 2008, the party recalled then President Thabo Mbeki. And then the understanding was that it was going to regroup and then do things differently. Before we knew it, on the 14th of February 2018, the party removed their second president, former President Jacob Zuma. And then now there are talks that the current one might not finish his term. I was shocked last week, not like the president. The president is always shocked about almost anything. But I was shocked when Snuki Zigalala said that if the current president were to be recalled, like it happened with Mbeki and Zuma, that would be tantamount to a coup, and then it would lead to instability. I had to hold my breath, asking myself, is this the same organization that recalled Mbeki and recalled Zuma? Why all of a sudden does the narrative change when now there are talks that the current president must leave? And in fact, the president resigned in 2022. We know that for a fact. It was the ANC that said, no, just hang on. We have the numbers. We're going to protect you. I asked a question at that time. You will protect the president, fine, but at what cost to the organization and at what cost to the country? I was not answered that question, but the elections last year answered that question firmly. And then this is where we are right now. Yeah, so they have to talk about this thing because it's at the center. The reason why the party is not performing well is because the caliber of the leadership is not what it's supposed to be.
I mean, we've even heard from Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi saying that the ANC in many ways is a sinking ship if the leadership issues are not dealt with, if the fight that they keep having within themselves is not dealt with, that the party is actually in crisis, particularly too. Does this NGC, do you think, provide the last chance for them to fix things? Or has that already gone by? Has that chance already gone and there's no way back really for the ANC from here?
There is very little to salvage, my brother. If there was something to be saved, then it would need honesty, which right now I think is in short supply. Because the fact that I'm just citing Snoki Zikalala saying that if you remove the president, that will be tantamount to staging a coup, which is something I find very bizarre. So until you have honesty within the party, until you deal with factionalism, until you are realistic, until you are open to a constructive criticism, there is no way that will rebuild the organization. The organization has rebuilt itself in the past because the party was able to self-correct. Currently, this is not the case. So I think this is the last opportunity for the party to do something. But in terms of saving its face, I think it's too little too late. We have local government elections coming next year, and the party has the elective conference coming in 2027, and then we have the general election in 2029. So time is of essence, and I don't think that this time then serves the ANC well in terms of organizing itself across all 9 provinces and then dealing with the leadership at a national level, be it the NEC, NWC, or this NGC that we're talking about today.
Yeah, and one wonders then where to from here when all of those conversations are being had. The survival of a party that has liberated or has led the liberation movement in the country, 30 years on, it seems to be fading. On the other side, you have conversations, deem it relevant or not, from Maibuya's own Floyd Shivambu, of course, formerly of ANC, formerly of EFF, formerly of the MK party as well. And he says there should never be a void. Can the void of the ANC in any capacity be filled by another party, do you think?
Ideally, it should, but unfortunately, from a practical point of view, that doesn't seem possible because currently we don't have a strong contender that would replace the ANC if it were to disappear. The reason why the ANC is still leading the multi-party coalition is because there was no strong opposition. You recall that up to the 6th administration, the DA was the official opposition party. But right now, the DA has an identity crisis because it still behaves as though it is the opposition party, when actually it is part of government. On the other hand, we have the ANC behaving as though it is still the governing party, when it has lost that status and is now just leading a coalition. Then on the other side, to look at the other political parties, there is no sure candidate that would replace the ANC if it were to leave. So basically, we are now stuck with multi-party coalition, and we don't seem to have a clue on how to run a multi-party coalition. You would have seen when President Ramaphosa addressed the ANC during the January 8 statement. I wrote an article where I drilled holes in what he did because he was saying that even though we're leading the multi-party coalition, we as the ANC were still in charge because the president and the deputy president come from the ANC. Most of the ministers and deputy ministers come from the ANC. I said this is not how you run a coalition because you serve at the behest of the other political parties by virtue of the fact that you could not get the 50+1 threshold. So you don't run a coalition like that. We're not ready for that, but unfortunately, that is the reality we are faced with. Even in 2029, unless something drastic happens, we are bound to have a coalition government. I don't see any party getting an outright majority, at least not as things stand right now.
Yeah, I wonder what that says really about our political sphere and the economic picture as well for the country in future. Earlier on, I just spoke to you about how they're choosing to not call this any kind of forum to discuss leadership positions. But there is word then from sources as well, it's even in some of the newspapers, of Togo Didiza coming up as a key person who could lead the party in future. That being backed by President Ramaphosa and even Gwede Mantashe, apparently, according to some of these reports, if they are to be believed. What does that signal about succession planning within the ANC, do you think? And how relevant could Togo Didiza be to moving the party forward?
Pakatayo, I don't have anything against Togo Didiza. In fact, she struck me as someone who is level-headed, as someone who executes her mandate well. But then, of course, being an individual is one thing, and being a member of a political party that has an image that has now taken a different route is something else. So in other words, as an individual, I think that she's good. She could be a leader. Of course, they will come and say that the culture of the ANC is that if you are the deputy president, when the president leaves office, you then automatically take over. I don't know how they are going to handle that, because some will be saying Paul Mashatile should therefore be, be having a guaranteed position that if Ramaphosa were to leave, then he will be the next one in line. I'm not sure if they will deviate from their culture. But Tokoti Tiza, as an individual, I think that she should make a good leader, provided, of course, she is supported by people who share her views and then people who put the country first and not factions first. Because the reason why we are where we are is because of factionalism.
And that has reared its head so many times and is one that we worry about even right now. Just as a final question, what is it that would come out of this NGC that would prove to you that the ANC is actually making strides in trying to change and renew itself? And then, can they fulfill it?
I like your last question, because the ANC, like the AU, like SADC, like all these other regional and continental bodies, were very good when it comes to policy formulation. The problem is implementation. There are certain policies that look good on paper that the ANC has crafted, including the step-aside policy. But when it comes to implementation, it's not implemented in the same way. It's implemented selectively. So in all probability, the party would have converged for these 3 days, and then it will come up with very clear guidelines as to what needs to happen going forward. But the implementation part, I can bet with my last coin that I don't see that happening, particularly because after all is said and done, before you implement that policy or that particular directive, you will first look at who is involved, and then you look the other way if it's your friend, and then you look straight on if it's your enemy. So that is the reality, unfortunately.
Ngaba Nkosi, please, let's keep our coins. We may need them in future. Please, let's not bet all of them at this stage. Prof, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us as well this morning. Professor Bheki Mngomezulu.